Hey, Space Ghost! You know what?
What?
That's what! That's what! Get it? Hey, Space Ghost, you know what? Hey, Space Ghost, you know what? No, seriously, you know what?
What?
That's what! That's you good, buddy. That's what. That's what.
Brack, if you don't stop doing that annoying whatever it is you're doing, I'm going to blast Zorak.
I don't believe you.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Believe it. Believe it.
I, Triple Dog, dare you to do that again.
No, you don't. No.
So I guess blowing up Zorak makes you feel like Mr. Big Stuff. Is that your answer to everything? Nice weather we're having. Space Ghost, can I make one little remark without you blowing Zorak up? I guess not.
Hey, why don't you zap Brack? He started the whole thing.
Oh, he'd love to blast me, wouldn't you, Space Ghost? Wouldn't you, Mr. Big Man? But he can't. You know why? 'Cause I'm not animated to explode. That's right.
Hi guys, it's Miss Myra with another episode of the Miss Myra Show. So, I know that this week, because I'm filming this on a Wednesday, but we had class yesterday and I was so sick. So I'm still getting better. So, I am going to try and not sneeze, cough, or blow my nose as much as I usually do while I'm doing this video for you guys. Okay, so we're going to go and we're moving into chapter 10. Now, chapter 10 we're going to spend a lot more time on because there is so much in here for us. So we're going to talk about so many things that we just can't cover in big, huge sections. So this is chapter 10, part 1. Now, in your textbook, remember you have a virtual textbook. I have a physical textbook. I have to keep repeating that because people will always say, well, why don't I have a physical textbook? Because I'm Miss Myra. Excuse me. I'm already coughing. All right. So we're going to start on page 360. So that's where we're in your textbook. We're going to cover 360 through 364. So, I mean, it's not a lot, but that's only because we've got so much to cover in chapter 10. I mean, we go through the civil rights era. We go through... all kinds of stuff happening. We go through Katrina, everything. So there's a lot that happens in between the pages of chapter 10. So get out your guided notes or whatever, and let's begin. So, excuse me. I'm going to try really hard not to cough like crazy. I do have some notes, because I wrote them down. I was like, I need to write some notes down because I don't know. Whatever. If I don't make sense, I'm going to try really hard to make sense. But if you like, Miss Myra, you're not making any sense, just kind of rewind or go back and hopefully I will make more sense. All right. So World War II is over. We talked about that our last class. We talked about how it ended. Now, when World War II was over, that made a lot of changes for the people in Louisiana, especially the women and the African Americans, because when World War II was going on, the women and the African Americans, they were able to, just have experienced things that were never ever open to them before. They were having jobs that they could have never performed before in peacetime. You had women out there in the workforce. I mean, when before, we had just gotten the right to vote, not even 50 years ago at this point, not now, and now they're working in these jobs. You see women working in factories, women in the military, women that are doctors, and there are lawyers, and there are all these big executives. They're working, they're doing this because the men are overseas fighting in this war. The same thing for African Americans. We see them, African American men and women having jobs that never before during peacetime that they would be able to have. You see them serving in higher ranks in the military. You see them in careers that before would have been absolutely closed off to them. So when World War II ended and all the people started coming back, they started to say, okay, well, we don't need you anymore. You can go back. Go back to doing what you were before. And so that meant go back. You're no longer welcome to do this job any longer. So all of these, African-American men and women, and the women were told, go back to the kitchens, go back to your houses, go back and take care of your families because we don't need you anymore. Thank you, but go. He's here to take his job back. And the same thing for the African Americans, where they had felt that there was so much more, equality because everybody was joined together as Americans, fighting for, against Hitler and what was going on with Nazi Germany and Japan. Now, all of a sudden, the war is over, and they're saying, okay, well, now we're not the same. We're no longer, brothers in arms or whatever, that they were saying military-wise. They were saying, no, go back. You can't work with us anymore. We don't accept you any longer. Yeah, we accepted you. We needed your help, when we were fighting and stuff. But now that the war is over, go back. We don't need you anymore. And that was a huge, huge letdown because we were making progress. We were going forward. And not all women wanted to go back. Some of them were like, I love this. I want to work. Like me, I am not the type of person who wants to be a stay-at-home mom. I would lose it. That is not at all what I want to be. There are some people that are like, yeah, that's so great. Stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad. Go ahead. That's wonderful. For me, that would be torture. Torture. Okay? I need to have a job. I need to be working. I need to be in school constantly. Much to my husband's, chagrin. He doesn't like that I am always in school. I love school. So I know I have a little bit of a problem. But I couldn't be. You tell me to go back at home, take care of my kids and family, cook and clean. I'd be like, are you out of your mind? So you can imagine women that were like me, that were saying, hey, I want to have a career. I want to go to school. I want to learn things. I want to go out in the job force. I want to do this. I want to do that. And now you're telling me I've got to go back in my kitchen and cook food for my husband and kids? When you had African-American men and women that now felt, there was a lot of way to go. A whole lot of way to go. But now they were actually seeing, okay, we're moving forward in the right direction. They were, all that, now the war's over. No, go back. Go back. And so you could imagine the frustration that was happening in the 50s and the end of the 40s, in the 50s, when the war was over. Not everybody was in this wonderful, it's wonderful post-war wonderfulness, because it wasn't. You had people that were not wanting to go back to the way that they were before, but were forced to do so. Now, some women stayed, in the positions that they were working in. Some African Americans stayed in those positions, but it wasn't a lot of them. Most of them were kind of told, okay, your services are no longer needed. Thank you, but goodbye. That's what they did. And it was a really, really big shame because, and also there were so many changes that were happening right after World War II. Now, what was going on, especially with, with the way that they were trying to push everybody back and they were putting segregation back into place, this is what ignited the civil rights movement. This pushback into the way of, separating people and non-equality for each other. And that's what really kind of set, fire and said, hey, you know what? This is it. We're not going to do this anymore. And after the civil rights era, you see more women going and speaking out about rights. You see the women's movement and all these things. And people saying, hey, wait, this is not right. This is not what we want to do. So I hear how terrible my cough is. That's good. It's good sounding. It was even worse than that. I'm telling you, this weekend and all that stuff was terrible. Ugh, but I'm getting better. That is the cough of someone who's getting better. So, so what this did, even though there were so many people that were disappointed, if you ever watch A League of Their Own, do you ever watch that movie? It's an old movie. I used to love that movie. I don't even say I used to. I do love that movie. And basically, it's like the women's baseball league, because all these soldiers, baseball players, were going to fight in the war. Big time actors and stuff were going to fight over the war. Elvis Presley, Clark Gable, all these people. So they started a all girls baseball league, you know, instead of I don't even watch baseball. I don't even know what it's called. MLB, Major League Baseball. It was women, and they were really good, and a lot of people really liked them. But when the war was over and the men came home, they said, "Okay, girls, we don't need you anymore. We don't need you to play ball anymore. Guys are back. So thanks, but go back home." And for a lot of these women, this opened up a whole new world for them. You realize, and for African Americans as well, you realize they had absolutely no idea about working outside in different aspects. There were so many doors that were closed. And when the war was going on and they needed somebody to step in and fill the spot, they had African Americans and men and women that were there to kind of fill in those spots. But when it was over, everybody kind of had to go back. I mean, if you stayed in your position, like I said, there were some that stayed. You were, very few people did. Another thing when World War II ended is that you had all these people getting married, okay? So, it was crazy, okay? Everybody was getting married. They survived World War II. They came home, they all got married. My grandparents, that's how they got married. My grandma was 15. My grandpa came home from the war and married her right away. I mean, they weren't the only ones. Everybody was doing it. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm alive and I'm going to get married and let's have a big old family to celebrate life. And they were all doing this. In the years, and I even highlight because I couldn't even believe this, in the years between 1946 and 1964, it's like what is that? Not 46, 56. So it's almost like a 20-year period. 77 million babies were born in the United States. 77 million. Call this the baby boom. And this is because all these men were coming back from being overseas and fighting in the war. They all people were getting married like crazy. And as soon as they got married, they started having all these kids, one after the other. My grandparents had 6 of them in rapid succession. One right after the other. So that was what is called the baby boom. And because of this huge population and all these little babies, they started saying, hey, we don't want to live in the cities anymore. It's not safe. I've got 12 kids. I can't have them running around the streets. I need to be living in the suburbs, somewhere to raise my kids where it's safe. So now you have suburbs popping up all over big cities. And all these people, these families with their 25 kids, are going to move to the suburbs. And now you see them everywhere. So my grandparents, to tell you about my own family story, my grandfather came home from World War II. He was in the Navy. Came home, he married my grandmother, who was very young. They got married. They started having kids. Boom, 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 boom. And they moved from New Orleans to Chalmette because it was a suburb where they felt, it was a better place to raise their family. And this wasn't just them. This was everybody. And then America had recovered, financially from the Great Depression in abundance. Because when the war was over, Blue's behind me sneezing up a storm. You okay? He's very allergic to himself. I don't know if y'all, he's over there. I'm not kidding you, y'all. Blue, the story of Blue, I'll have to tell y'all that in class, but he's a rescue kitty. He was returned twice to the shelter. Twice. And they didn't tell me why he was returned, but I can guarantee it was because he constantly sneezes because he's allergic to himself. And he needs to get, like, allergy shots and stuff like that. And of course, I love my Blue. And so he gets all his allergy shots, huh? Because your allergy shots? And he's really fat. I love fat cats. And thanks, guys, for the advice for Tigger, because he is feeling better. And eating. Oh, so great. So anyway, now not only did you have all these families and their kids move into the suburbs, we had a lot of money now. Not a lot. I mean, we did. Yeah, I'm going to say we had a lot of money. World War II was mostly fought in Europe and Asia. Nobody was fighting over here on American soil. Except for the bombing of Pearl Harbor, we were pretty much left alone. Therefore, all these countries, especially the Allied countries, Britain, and even Russia, and France, and after, they had been liberated from the Nazis. I'm going to finish this. And I'm going to continue talking. I can't get really excited. I'm starting to get excited. And it's affecting me. Like Mr. Myers, Yeti cup. Mine is like, I have two of them. One is pink and one is powdered blue. And they have my initials, really girly. But this is his because I can't find mine. Because I probably at school with my daughters. So I'm using his, which has the Punisher, I believe, on it. I don't even know. Because all his shows are stupid. And I think that's what this is. Real. Moving on. All right. So we had money now because all these countries in Europe were coming to us. They needed us to help them supply things before, during, and after the war. Okay. So now, because we did have money, we were able to kind of pass that money out to people. So people were having money. And so they started buying things. This is when we see the birth of the supermarket, where you go to the grocery store and you can buy all your groceries. We see this is when department stores come around. This is when people go and start buying cars. This is what consumer culture. Also, this is when we start to have leisure items and things like that. Things where we say, like, people were having money to go and buy records and to go watch movies and to go buy a TV and a radio in their house. So after the Civil War, there are several industries that get really, really big because of what happened after the war, and that we started to have money again. We start seeing the automotive industry exploding because people, they're moving out to the suburbs, they need a car. You know, how are you going to transport your 35 kids? Okay? We see grocery stores going out to the suburbs. Schwegmans. Ask your mama about Schwegmans.
Check it out, we're your store. Check us out, Schwegmans got more.
When you shop at Schwegman, you can expect to get more. More quality, more freshness, more low prices on more brands than most stores even carry. When you're making groceries, make it easy. Make one stop at Schwegman and you'll find it all.
Check out Schwegman now.
Everybody knows Schwegmans, right? It's like the biggest grocery store in New Orleans at this time. They're huge. They're everywhere. This is when they start having department stores buying clothes directly off of the rack, ready to wear. Before, if you had money, you made your own clothes. I mean, that's how most people survived. They made their own clothes. And if you were rich before the World War II and before the Depression, you would go to the department store, they would take your measurements, and they would make you something. Well, now, after World War II, you got all these people with money, and they want to buy something. They don't have a fortune to go spend to get like professionally tailored clothes, but they do have enough to spend to go buy a dress off the rack at one of these stores. So fashion is expanding. You've got people that are, creating fashions for everyday women, and you've got people that are playing music that are making money to be musicians, to be on the radio, actors, movies. All these things are happening because people have money to enjoy leisure. They're no longer worried. They're no longer worried that they're going to die with a depression or their world's going to come to an end with Nazi Germany. They're able to kind of relax and have fun. So all these things start kind of coming around. Okay? Y'all follow me with all that? I could pick this back up on another day, but I don't feel like it because I'm going and I want to continue going. Even though I'm dying and you're probably like, please! I don't have that many notes to go over. I don't. Actually, this one, I don't. But this is what's going on. So after World War II, Louisiana and America becomes a consumer economy. Now, in Louisiana, our consumer economy is focused on oil. Now, we have a lot of oil here. Whereas before, Louisiana was agricultural. That was how they had all their money. Well, now we've got all these oil places and oil. I'm going to pick this back up. I'm going to refilm on another day. So, I can't continue. So, I'm going to refilm on another day, just picking it up with the oil economy. Okay, I'll see you guys on another day. But this is going to be the same thing. It's just going to be continuing. So, hi guys. This is me picking back up after I was very sick before. And so now I'm getting better, and I shouldn't cough as much. I may still cough, but I'm telling you, it won't be nearly as bad. Okay, so we are continuing on with chapter 10. And now that I said that I will, my cough, I feel like I have to cough. It's a psychosomatic issue. All right. So we talked about oil. Now, oil was big in Louisiana. We were originally an agricultural economy. So we had all this agriculture that we were, growing here. That was how we made our mark in the very beginning. We had crops of king cotton and princess rice and King cotton, queen sugar, princess rice. We had all that. We were really, existing fundamentally as an agricultural society. Well, once World War II is over and all this industrialization is happening, we've gotten ships and airplanes and cars and new homes and all these things like buildings going up and all this, it's starting to require oil because that's how they're running the stuff. Oil is how the cars are getting their gas and all these other kinds of things. Oil is a source of energy in a way. So Louisiana, we had a lot of oil. So our industry changed from agricultural to an oil industry, and it was really a seller's market. And that means that we, as Louisiana, because we had the oil, we possessed it, we could hold it tight to our chest and say, okay, no, you got to pay for it. And oil is a natural resource that is in limited quantity. So we could pick and choose how high we wanted to make our prices. We could say, oh, we're going to make our prices, really high because there was so many people that were demanding the oil that there was going to be someone in there that was going to pay a lot of money for it. So Louisiana really started getting our big consumer economy was rooted in this oil industry. People started working on oil rigs, working oil refineries. I mean, I know a ton of people that work in oil refineries in Louisiana, a ton, and they make good money, and that's because it continues to be an amazing source of revenue for Louisiana. And when I say source of revenue, revenue means money, a way that you're getting the money, the way that it's coming in. So oil had replaced pretty much agriculture. Now we still have an agricultural society. There's still places in Louisiana where they're growing things and, you know, like that. But oil really influenced the consumerism in this state because people who owned this oil places, these oil rigs and oil industries. And so they hired people to come and work on their oil fields or oil refineries and things like that. And people started making money doing that and dispersed it throughout Louisiana. And so oil, definitely big thing in Louisiana. Now we're going to talk about my absolute favorite politician ever. Okay. His name is Earl Long. Now, Huey Long, we talked about him, you know, he was the governor of Louisiana, and he was extraordinarily colorful. He had a very colorful career. He, you know, he said that he did help people. You know, he had an idea. His ideas were to help the general public. And, you know, and I'm telling you, he would have given FDR a real run for his money if he were not assassinated. He was killed when he was at the Louisiana Senate, Louisiana Capitol. It was shot down and assassinated. Well, Earl is Huey's little brother, okay? And let me tell you where Earl is different, because where Huey, he kind of portrayed himself to be everybody's friend. You know, he was like, the way that he spoke, the way that his body language, things that he said and did, he really put himself out there to being like the friend to everyone. Every man's a king, you know, all his share of the wealth. Well, Earl was even more of that, okay? So compared to Huey Long, compared to Earl Long, Huey Long was FDR. He was polished and proper and dapper and all these kinds of things if you compare him to his younger brother, because his younger brother was none of those things. When he would go and campaign, he would wear like these overalls and stuff, and he would just like walk around, and you know, the way that he spoke, he had false teeth, and sometimes when he spoke, they would like kind of fall out of his mouth. He did crazy stuff, okay, crazy stuff. So Earl Long ran for governor of Louisiana. Now, after Huey died and he was assassinated, we had a string of governors that were anti-Long. They were tired of the way that Huey Long was running our government. They were tired of the corruption. They wanted to clean up Louisiana. Well, you know, after a while, people were like, I really miss having that charismatic just person out there like Huey. I really miss that. And so Earl capitalized on that. He said, hey, guess what? I'm his younger brother. I'm the better version. Well, Earl was never a dull moment with Earl. One of the things, you know how Huey, I don't know if we talked about it, but Huey would go around, he had this car with like speakers on it and stuff, and he would speak into the microphone, and the speakers, everybody around could hear them. They'd be like, Huey for Senate, Long for Senate, Long for governor, and all this kind of stuff. Well, Earl got on the back of a pickup truck. Instead of doing that, he went around Louisiana handing out hams and toilet seats. For real. Okay? I don't know, but I know there's a Mardi Gras crew, I think it's Tux, that hands out everything's toilet seats. I don't know if it has to do with Earl Long. It may, because he was handing out, they weren't new toilet seats though. They weren't used, they were new toilet seats. He's out there in his overalls and his false teeth, you know, and he's handing out toilet seats. Who does that? And ham. This is the weirdest combination. Here you go. Here's your toilet seat. Here's your ham. I mean, what? And so, oh my goodness. He started everybody started calling him Uncle Earl. You know, it's like, in Louisiana, in the South, we have a saying, is that we don't hide our crazy. We put them out on the streets, on the porch for everyone to see. Well, everybody's kind of got that one family member that's kind of, you know, a little out there. I am not that family member, if that's what you guys are thinking for my family. I probably am. They're probably like, yeah, the family member It's Aunt Jenny. I know my nieces probably think that. Oh well. But Uncle Earl, you know how everybody's like that one person is like, don't listen to old Uncle Earl or whatever. And that was what they started calling him. They started calling him Uncle Earl. Well, Earl was like, yeah, I'm Uncle Earl. I'll be Uncle Earl. And so he would use that nickname and continued on his campaign to, you know, handing out toilet seats and hams and saying that he was going to be like his brother and help the poor man, and he was going to get everything back to the way it should have been in Louisiana. He was going to, you know, he was going to be like a modern day Robin Hood and all these kind of stuff. So they called him Uncle Earl, and he was like, I'll be your Uncle Earl. It was crazy. Now, Earl was very, very popular, just like Huey, because he was so relatable. And not only that, you never knew what he was going to do. So even if you didn't relate to him in any of his policies or any of his political agenda, you for sure were watching him because you didn't know what was going to happen next. For real. I mean, this guy was... I'm not kidding you, y'all. He had a phobia that people were poisoning his food and stuff, and so he wouldn't eat at places, and he would eat like this, you know, because he was all afraid that people were going to poison his food. His wife at one point had him committed into a mental institution because he was totally off his rocker. His wife put him in a mental institution in Mandeville, put him there, and said, he's insane. He's crazy. He's crazy. He met this dancer on Bourbon Street. Her name was Belle Starr. And he was like, took her all these public events and stuff. And he was married. And this is, I mean, and so wait. And my favorite thing is like people are starting to say, and I'm going to include that clip right here. So I'm going to stop. No, not just yet. Wait. A lot of people were saying that Earl Long was insane. And it was like, everybody was like, Earl Long's crazy. He's crazy. He's crazy. So he gave like a short speech. And it cracks me up every time because he knew that everybody was saying this. And remember how I said that these newsreels were being shown like before movies and things like that? And this is one of the clips. It is my favorite clip of Earl ever. And here it is.
A look around the world at other top stories of 1959. The antics of Governor Earl Long of Louisiana cost him his state's support in 1959. He ranted at the legislature, got committed to a mental clinic, then lost an election for lieutenant governor. Here is Long in action.
I'm speaking against the advice of most of my doctors. I'll be back next weekend. I'm leaving on a vacation. I thought I owed it to you to come look you in the eye and let as many of you see me and see I'm living and I'm not nuts. If I'm nuts, I've been nuts all my life. Thank you, and God bless you.
I'm not nuts. And that was our governor. That was our governor. Come on. Oh my gosh. Okay, so some of the other things that he did, he absolutely hated the New Orleans mayor, Chet Morrison. He hated him. Like, he blatantly said, he is my arch nemesis. And he totally tried to get everything he could, all the power that he could, to get this guy out of office. He loathed him. Like, they were, like, mortal enemies. I'm having a really bad hair day, but oh well. They were, like, true mortal enemies, okay? So, what he did, though, he was a lot like his brother. And he really proved it with his dealings with Chet Morrison, because he really wanted Chet out. Because remember, when Huey was the governor of Louisiana, the governor of Louisiana, and then when he went over to the Senate, he still had control of Louisiana. He was still kind of puppeteering the whole thing. Oscar Allen, O.K. Allen, was his friend, and he was letting Huey kind of call all the shots. The reason Huey was even in the Louisiana Senate when he was assassinated was because he refused to go and fully take his seat in Washington, D.C., because he wanted to continue to maintain full control over Louisiana. Well, Earl wanted to do the same thing. He was like, I want to do the same thing as my brother. I want to be in control of everything. Well, he couldn't be in control of everything, especially New Orleans, because Chet Morrison was the governor. And Chet Morrison says, I can't stand Huey Long, and I can't stand his brother, and I will never let them have control over New Orleans, over my dead body. Well, Earl, he's doesn't have the best rationalization techniques, you know, like he doesn't think things through, and he's like, I'm gonna get you out. I mean, this is all like a public fight. Nothing is kept inside, you know, like hush hush, we want to, you know, keep this to ourselves. Earl like brought it all out in the streets. Okay, he brought it all out for everybody to see. So he started doing some things he wanted. He took away the power of the city's dock board away from Morrison. Now, because New Orleans, the port of New Orleans, was a lot of money. It was where all big time of the money. This is before tourism blew up in New Orleans. So their money really came from the dock board. Well, Earl, because he hated Chet Morrison, it was his arch nemesis, took away control of the port board, the dock board, excuse me, from Morrison, and therefore took away his ability to kind of regulate how much money and taxes and things like that were coming into the city. Took that away from him, okay? Then he got rid of everybody in the Louisiana New Orleans City Council. Got rid of all the people that he knew. I don't know how he did it. I'm sure it was corrupt. But he got rid of the city council members that were anti-Longs, like the people that said, oh, I don't like Huey Long either. And he replaced them with all of his own supporters, so that anything that Morrison tried to do, anything that he did, he was always voted no. It was always voted out by the Long supporters. So just like his brother, he filled up the legislative branch of Louisiana, of New Orleans, with his own people. And by doing that, he had control over everything. So Chet Morrison couldn't get anything really passed, because as the mayor of New Orleans, he can't just say, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. He's got to get it passed, just like any other executive branch. But because they were all friends of Earl, that was not happening. And same way that it was not happening with Huey Long. Now, during this time, though, not everybody liked Earl Long. Not everybody, okay? Because for one thing, Earl Long was running on the same kind of platform as his brother, saying that he was going to help the elderly, he was going to help teachers, he was going to help veterans, he was going to fix this, fix that. He was very much like his brother. He wanted to help everybody. He didn't really care about, you know, the race of a person, or, you know, if you were male or female. He didn't care about that. He wanted to help everyone. Now, you had, though, especially in the Deep South, and when I say Deep South, I mean places like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas. That's the Deep South. Okay, back again. So, I think we were talking about... Oh, yeah. So not everybody liked Earl. They didn't like him at all. So they weren't for him, especially the way that he was kind of like about equality. You still had, you know, people deep here in the South, which I didn't get to tell you my story about Texas and whatever, but I'll tell you another time. So people here in the South, they were saying, you know, we don't like that because we don't want desegregation. We don't want you know, what's going on. We don't want that. So they formed their own political party, and they were a political party for a while, and they called themselves the Dixiecrats. Now, the purpose of the Dixiecrats, they were kind of like a play on the Democrats. So the Democrats, they kind of broke away from the Democratic Party and formed their own, and they called it the Dixiecrats. And they were like no stranger to they just straight out said, they ran on the platform that said, we are going to preserve segregation, meaning we're not going to allow desegregation to happen. And that's what they ran on. That was their party platform. So they were substantial enough as a, you know, third party, you know, Republicans, Democrats, to nominate someone to run for president in 1948 against Harry Truman. And they nominated a guy named Strom Thurmond, and he was from South Carolina. He was a governor, and he called for the party in itself, and Strom Thurmond as its presidential nominee. They called for a repeal of the anti-lynching laws. They opposed the creation of a federal fair employment practices, because that would, you know, saying that you need to include people of all races in your hiring. And it called for a continuation of segregation. See, now that World War II was over, you had a lot of people that were coming back from the war and saying, okay, this is not going to work. I was equal to you, and you needed me and we were equals when we were fighting for our lives, but now you're going to tell me you want segregation again? So the civil rights movement's starting to gain momentum. The Dixiecrats did not want that. They were very, very, very afraid that that was going to happen. And so they ran on that platform of segregation in the South, which is insane. And basically they also did not like Earl Long, because Earl Long was about helping everybody out, even if it was with corrupt and questionable methods. So he did not have a lot of people that liked him. He had people that loved him, and then it was like this thing. It was like this. You either loved him or hated him. That's how it was with Earl. Same kind of thing with Huey. Now, Earl Long, you know, like I said, he lost the re-election he ran for he had 2 terms. He didn't do a third because he couldn't, but the guy that he had picked to kind of succeed him as governor lost the election, and Earl kind of fell away for a while. And the big thing of why Earl fell away and his nominee had lost the governor election, because he'd already run his 2 terms. So his nominee, Earl's pick, that he was going to put in office, did not win, because the people started to see how these programs and how all these platforms and these things that Earl wanted to do were not feasible. Because you see, he wanted, some of the things that he wanted to do, he wanted to give pensions for the elderly. He wanted to expand school lunch programs for underprivileged children. He wanted to raise teacher pay. He wanted to give the veterans bonuses. He wanted to build new schools, new hospitals, all these things. He wanted to do all these things. And initially, everybody was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Uncle Earl all the way. But as it started to come to fruition, after he was elected governor, he started to have to pay for it. These things are not free. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. They need to be paid for. And that's something that I want you guys to pay attention to, especially as we go into this election year. And so the people of Louisiana, they were saying, okay, now we need to pay for these programs. We didn't think about that, because now we need to do. And by the time Earl Long left office, the people of Louisiana and the average person in Louisiana ended up paying 50% more in taxes. 50% more with Earl Long than they had ever done before. So he had all of these programs that he wanted to institute, you know, all this stuff, which is all good things. He really wanted to help people, but they all need to be paid for. And they're paid for by the taxpayer. And the people of Louisiana, once they started seeing this big chunk coming out of their paychecks, they said, oh, no. We do not want anybody that's like Earl Long anymore. We want someone else. Now, Earl Long did come back for a 3rd term after a while, but it was in that term that he was admitted to his wife committed him to a mental institution, the whole issue with Belle Starr, the freaking out about poisoning of the food, that all was happening in his 3rd term. So during that 3rd term, it became quite evident that Earl Long was not fit to stay in office. And so that's all I've got for you guys today. When we are in class, we're going to talk a little bit more about how the civil rights movement began. We're also going to talk about the third party. We're going to talk about supply and demand. We're going to go on kind of an economic thing when we talk about the oil industry in Louisiana. And we're still going to talk about civil rights and the progression of moving forward, because that's what we're going to go into next week. So that's all I've got for you guys. Make sure that you put in the code word for today, and I will see you in class. Bye.